Hello everybody, assalamu alaikum. Let's continue with our review. Okay, we've finished elasticity. Hmm, then we did production possibility curve. Okay, but let's discuss a bit about production possibility curve. So production possibility curve is basically it's a like it shows the different combination of goods that can be produced if all resources in a country are fully used. Okay, suppose let me show like see. Okay, let's see this example. Okay, so this is a production possibility curve. So what is it is showing that suppose you have two options, you can produce guns or butter. Okay, so if you produce so you can like if you produce this a amount of goods. Okay, no, A is inefficient, right? Why? Because you had the resources to produce more. Like any options or point within this boundary is an effective one. That means you are using the resources effectively. But A, see, you are producing less amount of butter and guns, but you had the resources to produce more guns and butter if you can produce at B, D, or C. Okay, and X is impossible or unattainable because you don't have enough resources to produce such a huge amount of resources, right? Okay, so there can be other questions from here, like if you let's see another diagram. There can be many tricky questions from this part, okay, but very interesting. Hmm. Okay, see this one. Okay, so suppose you have two options. You can produce capital goods or consumer goods. So capital goods are the goods that are produced for producers, and consumer goods are the goods that are produced for consumers. Okay, so so what can happen over here that like if you produce at A, that means you're producing more capital goods. And if you produce at C, that means you're producing more consumer goods compared to capital goods, right? Okay. So if a question comes like how much you're sacrificing because of choosing option A, okay? If you're choosing option A, that means you're gaining more capital goods, right? So that means you're sacrificing consumer goods, right? You're sacrificing consumer goods to gain more capital goods. Okay, and you can also calculate the amount. It can be like this from this position. Um, here from this position to that position, and the difference between this a and C in the capital goods axis. These are the amount you are gaining, but what are you sacrificing? It's the difference between A and C in the consumer goods axis. Okay, so this is the amount that you are sacrificing. So these are the opportunity cost. Why? Because you are sacrificing this amount of this particular amount of consumer goods to gain some particular amount of capital goods. Okay. There can be another question like which point is better for economic growth, option A or option C? Yes, option A is better. Why? Because in option A you are producing more capital goods, so more capital goods leads to more production. Okay, so if you produce because if you produce more consumer goods, this you'll these will be sent to the final users and it's over. Resources will be consumed. But if you spend your resources to produce capital goods, that means it will these resources will be helped to produce more goods, services. Okay, so it's better for economic growth. Okay, and there are cases of like shift of PPC curve. See, this PPC curve, suppose this AB was the PPC curve, so this was your initial PPC. So it can go outward or inward. If it goes outward, that means you have now more resources to produce more output. Okay, so somehow you're now in a position to produce more output. Okay, so what can lead to this situation? Like economic growth is one of them. Like it will help you to produce more. Then technological improvement, the discovery of new resources or mine. Then providing training. Okay, increasing productivity. This will help you to produce more output. And inward shift of PPC is like because of war, political instability, natural disaster, labor strike. Okay, so what happens that the PPC curve will shift inward because the resources are not in usable condition. You can say that it's becoming inefficient. Inefficiency means like you had the chance to use them, but because of this situation like war, natural disaster, you are not in a position to use these resources properly. So a lower amount of PPC will be considered as an efficient one. Okay, so moving forward, there are different two types of sectors: public sector and private sector. Public sector means like when resources are produced by yeah, government or state, and the resources are owned and controlled by the government. Goods and services are produced by government. Okay, and in private sector, what happens? It is in these cases, these are the resources that are owned and controlled by the individual or group of individuals. Okay. So based on these two, there are two types of extreme economy. Like market economy means it totally depends on private sector, and command economy means that it's depending totally on public sector. So these are two extremes. Okay, but nowadays mixed economy is more popular because of both market economy and command economy has suffered a problem in solving economic problems, right? So that's lead to mixed economy. That means a combination of public sector and private sector. Okay. Okay, then we have market failure. Market failure means where market leads to inefficiency. So this kind of inefficiency will be very will lead to think about a product like suppose a laptop. What's the price of it? Suppose 50,000. Why 50,000? Because in a market economy, what happens that these are determined by the forces of demand and supply. So this demand and supply will lead to market equilibrium, right? So that's the price. But because of market failure, what happens? Inefficiency. That means the firms or the consumers or the other people in the society, somehow they had to pay more or less because of the market failure. It's the price is not in the equilibrium maybe. Okay, so this leads to inefficiency. Let's go through some examples like externalities. Externalities is the spillover effect of the spillover effect of the, yeah, production or consumption of goods and services. Okay, so if it is a negative spillover effect, and that means it's negative externalities, and if it is a positive one, it's positive externalities. Okay, so externalities means what? It means okay. So we have some good mornings here. Okay, good morning. Okay, good morning, Samin Yasir. Good morning, Ishrar Anandria. Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, let's continue with our topic. Let me know if you're facing any problem. Okay, so externalities are spillover effect. That means these effects are on what? These effects are on um, the other people who are not producing or consuming goods and services. Okay, this is the third party. These are called third party because suppose if you buy a car, you are the consumer, and maybe Toyota is the producers. So when this production or consumption takes place, okay, you may cause some negative externalities on the other people in the society, in terms of air pollution or traffic congestion, okay, sound pollution. Okay, okay, and at the same time, you may also create some positive externalities, like those people who are not buying or selling this car, they will be positively affected. Like your driver will get employment, your gas station will get revenue out of as you're maintaining the car, you're paying the garage, mm, and also maybe you're providing free lifts for your friend and family. Okay, so this will be the positive effect, that means positive externalities because of this car. Okay. Okay, next we have lack of competition. Lack of competition means like when there is no competition, or monopoly. Suppose when monopoly there is only one seller, right? And so what happens? They charge higher price even in oligopoly, when there is only few sellers. Because of the lack of competition, often the consumers end up paying higher amount of prices, right? So this is again a market failure. Next is missing markets. So mainly there are two types of missing markets: public goods and merit goods. Public goods are the goods that are not produced by private sector. So government needs to come over and provide these services like street light, police, defense. Okay, so these kind of services the private sectors are not interested to provide. So the public sector or the state need to provide it. Next is merit goods. Merit goods are under provided by the underprovided, right? So that means these are there are private sectors in this industry, but yeah, it's not there. It's not enough for all the people of the country. Okay, so government needs to interfere and provide this. Suppose education, healthcare. Okay, like there are private schools, right, in our country, but is it enough for all the people of the country, or can the people afford these private schools? Okay, so no, right? So that's why the government needs to come up with free schools, or subsidized school, okay, where people can study at a very low cost, low price, right? Next is lack of information. Lack of information is also causing a problem. Like if you lack information, your seller may fool you and charge you higher price, right? Then factor immobility. That means you have resources maybe, but because of the immobile nature, you may fail to take a business opportunity, and you even if you have the resources, but you cannot use them. So it's causing factor immobility. Okay. Then we have division of labor. Division of labor means like when you're yeah, splitting the works among the workers of a production process. So what happens that first of all you break down the production process into small parts and assign the workers to workers who are specialized in it. Okay, suppose think about a table. In a table factory, you're making furniture, you're making table. So in the table what you're doing is you'll assign works to of cutting the woods to the woodcutters. Then you'll assign works of painting to the painters. And all the other jobs will be distributed accordingly to the people who are good at it, right? So this way you can apply division of labor. So what is the advantage of this division of labor? If you think from the perspective of workers, from the perspective of the workers, what will happen that the workers will now will be able to work faster, better, and a more efficient manner, quicker, easier, right? So these are good things. And if you think from the farm's perspective, it's also a good thing because now they'll get their output faster, cheaper, at a lower cost, more efficiently, more effectively. It's a very good thing. But there are some negative things as well. From the workers' perspective, is like one of the main disadvantages: the division of labor sometimes becomes very boring. Okay, because the workers, by doing the same thing again and again and again, it this repetitive job will become very boring, right? So from this boredom, the problem arises like the workers become demotivated, they will lose interest, and they will the workers will end up suffering from absenteeism or other demotivating things, like they'll lose interest by doing the same thing again and again. Okay, so and the farms will suffer the quality of work may fall because of this demotivation by the workers, and your goods may also become very standardized. It won't be much different from your competitors because you're using division of labor. If you want to use you make unique products, usually the farms need to come up with you need to assign workers with unique works. Okay, not like repetitive works. Okay, so again it might be a problem for them. Okay, and smaller firms cannot afford this division of labor. Then in labor market we have in labor market we have wage rate. Wage rate is determined by the forces of the demand and supply. So wage rate is the amount paid to the workers. So if wage rate changes, the demand and supply also changes, and wage rate is also determined by the forces of demand and supply. Okay. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Okay, or if you have any confusion, let me know. Okay. Okay, so demand curve, see, so when wage rate changes, demand curve also changes, right? Suppose see in this example what's happening, that when wage rate was falling from W1 to W2, what's happening, the demand for labor is also increasing from Q1 to Q2. Right, so this kind of change is known as movement along the demand curve, because this change in wage rate is causing demand to increase. Mhm. And there are other non-wage factors. This will lead to shift of the demand curve. So demand curve may shift to the right or left when demand will increase. Even if the wage rate is fixed, because of this factor, demand curve may shift to the right when demand increases, and it may shift to the left if demand falls. So let's go through these examples, like derived demand. Derived demand is what? Derived demand means that the demand is rising because of demand of another goods. Okay, suppose if demand for construction increases, demand for construction workers will also increase. Demand for software increases, then demand for software programmers will increase. Okay. Then cost of recruitment. If cost of recruitment is high, then demand for new labor will fall, but demand for existing labor will increase, because you don't want to lose your existing labor, because cost of recruiting is very expensive. Okay. And then availability of substitute of labor. So machines or robots, they are the substitute of labors. So if they become cheaper, if the substitutes like machines become cheaper or available, then demand for labor will fall. Firms will switch to machines instead. Okay, next is productivity of labor. If productivity of labor increases, of your current labor, existing labors, then what will happen? The demand for those labor will increase. And Okay, and on the other hand, you can say think that like, if sometimes what happens that demand may even fall, because with a small amount of worker you can, if you can achieve your targeted amount of output, then you won't be needing so many number of high number of labor, right? Next we have supply factors. So supply of labor is an upward rising curve. Whenever the wage rate decreases, the workers become demotivated, and supply of labor falls. Okay. So again, this is a movement along the supply curves, because of the change in wage rate, and change in non-wage factor will lead to a shift of the supply curve. Like school living age. If school living age increases, what will happen? In school, if school living age increases, the if school living age increases, then what will happen? That laborers will be spending more time in the school, so the supply of labor will fall. If retirement age increases, that means elder peoples will be able to work now, so supply of labor will increase. Willingness of women, if willingness of women to work is positive, then supply of labor will increase. If number of immigrants increases, then what will happen? Supply of labor will increase, because you'll have more laborers now. Then dependence ratio. If elder peoples increases, then the dependent people will increase, and also if the young people increases, the dependency ratio increases. That means the people who are not able to work, if their number increases, then it will be a burden on the laborers, right? And if they become older, the supply of labor is falling, right? Okay, so you'll find lots of questions like this, and there are lots of examples in the books. I'm not going through this, but if you're facing any problem, let me know. We'll go through. Say that whenever demand or supply of labor increases or decreases, there will be change in the equilibrium wage rate. Okay. And another thing is, say that the wage is different for different kind of occupations. Why is that? It's because of the skill. Okay. So because the skill labor, number of skill labor is very low, right? So that's why it's very difficult to develop skill labor. So that's why it's inelastic. So that's why the supply of inelastic, supply of skill labor is inelastic. Okay. That means it's like this. It it's almost like a vertical line. Okay. Supply of skill labor. Okay. And supply of unskilled labor is like this. It's a bit flatter. Okay. Almost like a horizontal line. Okay. uh, why? Because it's very easy to increase the number of unskilled labor, because almost everybody is in unskilled labor. Skilled labor are rare. Okay. Because it's, suppose think about a specialized doctor. Okay. He's a skilled worker. The number of skilled doctor is not too much, right? It's very few. Maybe few hundreds or thousands maybe. But if you compare it with unskilled labor, it's like in millions or billions of people are there who are unskilled, right? Okay. Okay. So sometimes what happens that there are interference in the labor market. Okay, mostly the interference is from the government or the trade union. So government comes up with minimum wage legislation. So this is the way government interferes in the labor market. Okay. So see what's happening that because of this minimum wage legislation, government can come up with minimum wage. That means it's a law which ensures that you don't uh, produce in large quantity. No, sorry. Even when the labor equilibrium wage rate is too low, at that time government interferes and comes up with minimum wage legislation. Comes up with a law which ensures that no firms will be allowed to pay workers at equilibrium price. Definitely, it has to be above it, and government sets the limit. No one can pay below that limit. Okay, and what's the reason for this minimum wage legislation? Because they can solve poverty and they can help disadvantaged worker, and also it helps business because a higher wages motivates worker and it can improve the quality of work. Then trade union can also interfere. Like trade unions are the organization that works for the rights of the workers. Right. So trade union will lead to what? If they are strong, then they can interfere in the labor market in terms of they can negotiate their pay, their working condition. Then they can provide legal supports. Then they can put pressure on the government so that they can come up with laws that are helpful for the workers, like minimum wage legislation is one of them. And then provide financial benefits like strike pay. Sometimes they go for strike, trade union, right, when they're very strong. So at that time, during strike, the workers may not get paid by the firms. So during that time, the trade union may pay an amount so that they can feel the workers may feel safer when they're going for strike. Okay, so these are the situation. Okay. uh, but it's an important question, like effect of minimum wage legislation. That what happens that as we are charging higher wage rate, right? Suppose, let me show it here quickly. Um, Suppose equilibrium is like this, right? Mm, the wage rate was here, W1, and the quantity was here. But what government does, government increases the amount to W2, which is above the equilibrium price. So whenever government does that, what happens? See, the demand of labor will fall to this point, and supply of labor will increase to this point. Why? Because demand will decrease because the farms won't be able to afford this expensive labors, and supply will increase because it will attract more labors into the market. So sometimes what happens, it may create unemployment. So that's a huge problem for the because as government is trying to solve the problem, it's creating another problem. Okay, so we need to, it's very challenging situation for the government. Okay, so in the next class we'll talk in details. Okay, thank you very much. See you in the next class. Thank you.